Recently, I did a video on my Toshiba Satellite A65-S126, a laptop with a desktop Celeron processor. It probably sounds very stupid, and it is, but today I think I found the exact opposite of that. This is the HP Pavilion Slimline. Wait, what the hell happened to this carpet? I spilled a shake on the carpet, so it kinda looks bad, and I didn't have time to clean it, so oh well. Anyway, this is the HP Pavilion s7410n. It's technically called the Pavilion Slimline, but that's a mouthful. This weird thing was an eBay find for like 20 bucks. And what caught my eye was that it has a Celeron M processor in a desktop. I honestly thought it was a joke at first, but it sounds like a very HP thing to do, to put a mobile processor in a desktop computer. I don't know a whole lot about it otherwise, and HP decided to delete all of the information about this system, so I can't even look up to find any information on it. There weren't a whole lot of photos or any information that really helped with this. All I knew is it had that Celeron M processor because, let me tell you, if there's one thing I need, it's another socket 479 computer in my house. This box appears to be pretty small, so maybe I can understand that processor decision a bit more. This thing better have good thermals though. Ignoring the processor, the PC itself appears to be in alright condition. It's really just kind of dirty, which I honestly prefer over it being scuffed to hell. There's a couple scratches and dings on it, of course. That's just kind of what's going to happen with a computer, but it really doesn't look that bad. The bottom is the dirtiest though. It will definitely need a clean. The only other specs that I know is that it has a DVD drive in it, and it also apparently doesn't have a hard drive, which isn't that surprising. Despite this being a small box, this thing appears to have a full-size I/O shield in it though, which of course means that there's not a lot of room for the power supply or the single expansion slot on the back of the PC. This thing does have a decent amount of exhaust on the back though, which it probably needs, to be honest, because there's not a whole lot of other ventilation on this case. Well, there's nothing else on the exterior. What's the worst that could happen with the top pulled off it? I don't know how this computer comes apart, so I'm literally just gonna figure it out on camera, because that is how I do things. There were 3 screws holding this panel on. It turns out that the bottom and the side panel are all one piece, which I guess makes sense for a machine like this. Wow, there is a lot going on here. The first thing I noticed was this cooling fan, which appears to be mounted in an exhaust position. It also appears that somebody cleaned it, which is pretty nice of them. It just kind of unclips from the optical drive and then it just lifts out of there. It's pretty tight in there though. These wires are all separated from each other, so it seems pretty clear that somebody was messing with this before. The next things I can see are the power supply, the DVD drive, and the built-in modem. That DVD drive appears to have a manufacture date of 2006 on it, so assuming it's the original drive, and it has an HP part number on it, so I would think so, then that's probably around when this computer would have been manufactured, early 2006, which I guess makes sense for the hardware in the machine. As for this specific drive, it appears to be manufactured by Toshiba Samsung, so alright. It's also an IDE drive, which wasn't really uncommon for the time, so that's not really that surprising. What is a bit weird is this cable that it's using, but we'll get back to that in a sec. The optical drive appears to just lift out of here after removing this thumb screw on the side. It has some other screws that it uses to kind of mount in there, but it's actually pretty toolless, which I'm kind of surprised. It is quite a long drive, so it's a bit of a tight fit in this system. But if it works, then I don't really care, because I need functioning optical drives. Might as well just start picking this system apart at this point. I saw these screws down here, which I assume holds the hard drive cage in. As you can see, this thing does not have a hard drive, like I said, which isn't that big of a deal, data security. This tray seemed really large at first. I was a bit surprised by it, but it turns out that the actual hard drive tray is mounted inside the existing caddy Honestly, the fact you can remove the whole cage at all is a bit surprising, since usually they just rivet this kind of thing into the case. Of course, because this is such a small box, it only has room for one hard drive. Though rather interestingly, it appears to be a SATA drive, which is pretty nice. I wasn't expecting that. The original modem in this machine appears to be manufactured by Agere, so cool. The power supply in this thing is manufactured by Akbel, which is good, and it's 108 watts. So I guess when you put it that way, it makes sense why they chose this processor, because everything Intel made at the time practically had a TDP of about this entire power supply. Here is that heatsink for the aforementioned Socket 479 processor. Presumably this thing can take a Pentium M, but I don't have one, and the way this heatsink design clamps in, I don't really like very much, so I don't really want to remove it unless I overly need to repaste the processor. In fact, it appears to just be a slightly bigger chipset heatsink. You can compare it to the chipset heatsink that is right next to it. They're not even that different in size. Amazingly, this board appears to have 2 SATA ports, not just one, so I could replace this with a SATA optical drive if I was so inclined to. And this IDE cable is weird. Now I understand why they did it this way, it's probably to save space because it's a much shorter ribbon cable, but it's still unique. This thing also appears to use full-size RAM. In this case, this machine appears to have 2GB of DDR2 533MHz RAM. Knowing that it's HP, I expected there to be more laptop components in this machine, but so far everything appears to just be standard desktop components with the exception of the processor. I would also suspect, because of the chipset and everything, that 2 gigs is probably the most this system can take. There isn't really a whole lot else that's interesting about this board. It's a pretty tiny board. I think it's ITX is the right form factor. It looks to be pretty standard though. All the headers and everything are just standard things. The only thing unusual is this power supply connector. So if this power supply ever died, then trying to replace it might be a bit weird. Assuming it's even a standard form factor. I don't know. Small form factor stuff is foreign to me. But everything seems to be in pretty good shape. And all of this board's capacitors are in good shape. None of them are leaking, which is excellent. This board appears to have a model number of PTGV-GM, so I think that's ASUS that manufactured this board, but I don't honestly know because it doesn't say ASUS anywhere. But that's the kind of font they would normally use for their model numbers, and ASUS normally uses yellow PCBs. Before I start putting this machine back together, I decided to re-cable manage everything, not because it had to be, but because it bothered the crap out of me otherwise. At least they designed this case with these tabs in it, so cables can be easily run and kind of just put out of the way without everything looking ridiculously bad. It's probably not the best job ever, but it's certainly better than it was before. Now I don't overly need this modem in this machine either, but I don't have a blank to put in here, so we'll just go ahead and put it back in. Now as for hard drives, I conveniently have an old 250 gig WD Caviar drive that's from 2006, so it practically fits in this computer. This drive is even old enough that it still has a Molex connector on it. Unfortunately, I don't really have any screws to mount this drive. I only have one screw that is flat enough to actually fit in this machine. As you can see, because of how tight everything is in this case, the screws have to be thin enough so that they don't press against the top of the drive cage and actually fit in there. But fortunately, it seems like even with one screw, it is pretty secure. By the way, you better hope you put everything back together the right way the first time, because otherwise, all of it has to come apart again. The SATA cable for the hard drive runs underneath the tray with the front panel headers, and you can't run it another way because this thing is so tight that it won't fit. This drive cage definitely doesn't feel that sturdy. It's kind of loose in the case even when it's all screwed in, but what are you gonna do, I guess? This DVD drive appears to be missing a pin. Not sure how that happened. It's like shortened in there. I've already thought about maybe replacing this optical drive with one that's a bit shorter, just because this cable is already really tight as is, and I don't really want to break this IDE cable because I don't think I'm gonna be able to get another. It's so weird. But we'll work with it for now because I have no idea if it works. And after that, the fan just clips back in. It's definitely a bit difficult to get it in, but yeah, this thing is one compact system. It's also surprisingly heavy. given how tiny it is. I just realized this thing is missing both of its screws on the VGA port. Also, you're gonna have to ignore the noise. I have a window open because I'm gonna die in here otherwise. Well, sounds promising. Oh yeah. Well, we got a power LED. Good lord, I need to clean this monitor. Yes, you do. But look at that, it fires right up. Perfect, I love when this happens. Well, apparently that hard drive is plugged into the wrong port, so that's very good. But it sees both the drives, so that's always a win. The CMOS battery appears to be dead, which isn't that surprising. I have a replacement. And both 2 gigs of RAM show up just fine at PC2 3200, so it's definitely not fast, but I don't know what you expected for a system like this. This appears to be BIOS revision 3.06 from October of 2005, so maybe that's when this board was manufactured. So there it is, we have an Intel Celeron M at 1.7 gigahertz. So it's about on point with the Pentium in that crappy laptop. Concerningly, after being powered on for like 3 minutes, the CPU is already idling at almost 50 degrees just in the BIOS. So this thing might need a repaste, because I didn't even know a Celeron could get to 50 degrees. Otherwise, everything else just seems to be fine. So, okay. Let's go ahead and install an operating system, because this hard drive is currently blanked out. Oh man, it's jammed. Ah, well that works. Now this thing originally came with Windows XP Media Center Edition. That's right, I thought this was a joke at first, but it turns out HP actually shipped this thing as a Media Center PC. I mean, to be fair, anything can be a Media Center PC, but usually you associate that with something high-end. Anyway, that's what they did, so that's what the key on the side is for. I don't have a disk for that on hand though, so I just installed XP Pro for the time being. Aside from the DVD drive being jammed, it seems to work just fine, which is definitely a score. And it really didn't take that long either. Rather interestingly, it appears to have made the primary drive H, and for some reason the C drive is a removable disk in the card reader, which is interesting. Well, I think you know the drill at this point. It's time for drivers. Weirdly, this thing has an NVIDIA driver. Not sure if this is Snappy Driver Installer just being drunk or what, because this thing has an Intel chipset, but okay. But yeah, that process, while it took its time, was pretty uneventful. But now we have all our drivers, including that same crappy 915 GPU driver that I hate. So yeah, Windows XP is installed and runs on this computer just fine. So that'll be the end of this video then. I guess there's nothing else to do, so thanks for oh, wait, you probably looked at the runtime of this video, didn't you? Alright, it's time for the real game plan. I did look on the Internet Archive to see if there were any recovery disks for this thing, but there weren't. However, what I do have is the media that I used on the HP Pavilion A1206N last year, which was Windows XP Media Center Edition. HP doesn't really change their media for different systems, it's basically all the same stuff for the most part, and they're from the same era, so I don't see why it shouldn't work. You can hear the noise difference between these two systems, that's for sure. In fact, this appears to just be a larger version of this computer, except it's an AMD processor instead of an Intel. And it actually uses a real CPU. It conveniently also has a 250 gig hard drive, so I can just plug the hard drive I put into the Slimline into this, and just clone the drive. And aside from the CPU being different, they're pretty similar systems otherwise, so in theory, if the media worked on this system, it should just work fine on the Slimline. Because it's the same capacity, everything just fits into place. It's like this was meant to be. Oh. Or not. It refused to dismount the Windows XP drive I just installed, so I did the most logical thing and I just nuked it. And it seemed to be a lot happier after that. Now this process took a while. Like, a while. So did it work? Windows Vista? What the hell is this? Yup, in a now cancelled video from last year, I attempted to upgrade this thing to Windows Vista. For some reason. It didn't work very well, and it doesn't really work well on this computer. It took 15 minutes to boot up. So we're going to use Hybrid's boot CD to initiate this recovery process. It's exactly the same as the process that I did in the aforementioned Pavilion A1206N video, even though that's kind of a crappy video. It's the same process that's going on here. So if you actually want to watch that, then just go watch that video instead. Amazingly, it didn't take that long. It actually took less time than the other computer did. So, yippee, I guess. Now, while I was here on Hybrid's boot CD, there were a couple things I wanted to do straight away that I thought were going to be a problem. First of all, I wanted to get rid of that stupid config check folder before it causes any issues. And secondly, I ran fix HDC just because I wasn't sure if this media would pick up the hard drive controller that was on this install. I figured it can't hurt, and it actually worked after that. So, cool. What's not cool is that my mouse didn't frickin' work. Apparently, USB devices take an extra like 5 minutes to install after the out-of-box experience has booted up. Thanks, HP. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? This thing doesn't appear to have a GPU driver installed because everything looks like crap. But so far, the system actually didn't appear to be that slow, which is kind of what I was expecting given the processor in this thing. And interestingly, unlike the other computer, this wasn't throwing nearly as many errors with software that the other one did. It seems like this media is a lot happier on this system than the other one. It also had more drivers than on the other Pavilion. We were only missing Ethernet and the video controller on this, which is pretty good actually. I thought we were going to be way off with drivers. So of course it's the exact same process again, and the same NVIDIA driver is still here, so I guess it must have not been a fluke with that other install. Is it probably the same image that shipped with the computer? I'd be surprised if it was, but is it close enough? Yes. So with that in mind, it's time to finish the system and put it back together. Now that I know that the hard drive image actually works, we can put the drive back in. And there is one more thing. As I alluded to earlier, I'm going to replace this optical drive with a slightly different one. This Toshiba drive works fine. It's just that it's a bit long. So I'm going to put in the drive I used in the s7410n. It's just a bit shorter than the existing drive. But I figured it might fit better in this system because everything is so tight. Both of these drives work and function the same, so it's not like either of these computers are being downgraded. It's more something I wanted to try, because while the s7410n is pretty tight as is, this is even tighter. If that other drive ends up having issues, then I'm going to swap them back, but I figured in the meantime, we'll try this. It still appears to eject just fine with this front panel, so I don't see why it wouldn't fit in this computer. It just gives a bit more room for the IDE and Molex cables not to be shoved up right against the cooling fan either, since the cooling fan was brushing against those cables if it wasn't put together correctly. So I think it's time to put the panel back on. This thing is pretty much done. This panel definitely is a bit difficult to put back on, but it's manageable. I'll give this thing one thing, with the panel back on, this is a pretty quiet system, other than the drive noise. And I did check, just to be safe, that DVD drive does open vertically, which is excellent. Also, I fixed that hard drive cable. This board also appears to have its original identification stuff still on it, since it still knows what the model number is, so that's always cool. Anyways, just typical XP stuff otherwise. I updated it to Service Pack 3, which, unlike the other system, didn't throw a fit on this. I was actually able to boot it up without having to make registry changes. Which I guess makes sense because the driver on the other system that was problematic was an Intel driver. Next, I sat through a whole lot of Windows updates just to get this thing up, and nobody cares about this. What am I talking about? Actually, what is notable is that I instantly nuked Norton 2006 on this machine because it was slowing the computer down a lot. Now, just because I had to know, I did open the Media Center program on this PC just to see if it actually ran properly because this GPU driver is so bad, but yeah, it actually works just fine. I don't really know what I was expecting. Hardware was a lot better in 2006 than when the Media Center edition of XP was introduced, so frankly, even a crappy computer like this is just fine on Media Center. It's just like I said earlier, you usually associate a Media Center PC with being something nice. But given this thing's small size, I could easily see its appeal in a Media Center. Because in all honesty, the rest of the hardware really isn't that bad, except for the CPU. It still uses desktop RAM, it uses a desktop hard drive, optical drive, even does have an expansion card slot, and the rest of the board is all desktop components with the exception of the processor. I might buy a Pentium M for this, I don't know. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't work. I'll definitely have to keep an eye on thermals on this machine. The thermals weren't that different from what I saw in the BIOS earlier, so maybe it will be fine. I do wonder if maybe some of that is because the CPU doesn't have direct contact with a fan. I don't know. But it seems to be okay, so I guess I'll just leave that for another day. Otherwise, I don't really know what I'll do with this system necessarily. It was more just I bought it because it seemed weird. But then again, that's like what 90% of my collection is. I can't imagine this system running anything else other than XP, mostly because I hate the graphics driver in this computer. We've already been down this rabbit hole before. But like I said, the rest of the system doesn't appear to actually be that bad. I mean, excluding the processor, for 2006, this thing would have been pretty good with 2 gigs of RAM and a 250 gig hard drive and a LightScribe DVD drive. I'm definitely going to do a full video on this thing, going even deeper into the weird things about it and actually seeing how good it is to use. I'll have to see how it does with more things on it, because definitely with this install of Windows, it's obviously a lot slower than it was with the clean install. But honestly, as judgmental as I was at the beginning of the video, I don't think it's nearly as bad as I expected it to be. So it's pretty much done, but there is one more thing that needs to be done with this system. Might not be the best way to clean it, but anything's better than nothing. Oh yeah, it's definitely dirty. Can't see because the frickin' sun is so bright. Yep, definitely need to clean. I'll give it this, it's really not as bad as I thought it would be. Yeah, I mean there's a bit of dust, but it's really not that bad. Actually, I was expecting it to be a lot worse. Yeah, for the price I paid for this thing, that's actually pretty good. Yeah, look at that. Not bad, actually. Whoever cleaned this, I'm gonna assume somebody cleaned this. They did a pretty good job. Because normally these things, they're covered in dirt and grime and everything. I think the bottom might be the worst of it all. And even then, arguably, I would say that that's not quite as bad as I would have expected. You know, something a bit weird I just noticed? These feet are yellowed. How did that even happen? Because these, I think, are supposed to be the same color as these. And you can see that that's not the case. That's like the one thing about this computer, is that these feet are just, they're yellowed. That's bizarre. Well, it ain't the best wipe down I've ever done, but looking much better. Yeah, definitely an improvement.